Welcome to the Bold Lounge podcast. My name is Lee Burgess, and I will be your host. If you're anything like me, you love hearing inspiring stories of people who have gone on bold journeys and made a positive impact in the world. This podcast is all about those kinds of stories. Every week we'll hear from someone who has taken the leap or embarked on an extraordinary journey. In addition to hearing their stories, we'll also learn about their bold growth mindset that they use to make things happen. Whether they faced challenges or doubts along the way, they persisted and ultimately achieved their goals. These impactful stories will leave you feeling motivated and inspired to pursue your own bold journey. I believe everyone has a bold story waiting to be played. Tune in and get ready to be inspired. Welcome to the Bold Lounge. Today we have Michelle Pecak, who is a leader in the electrical distribution field. And I'm very excited to have you here, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and watch your journey and to watch the Bold Lounge take off. So I'm honored to be a part of it.
So first off, tell us a little about yourself and just a brief introduction, a little bit about Michelle.
Yeah, sure. So I am a single mom of three amazing boys. They're 12, 9, and 6, so they keep me very busy. I also have two golden retrievers that have the unconditional love of following mom around and keeping my feet warm at all times. So they've been a very unexpected blessing to my life. I didn't mean to have two golden retrievers, but I do, and they're amazing. I've been in the electrical distribution field for over 20 years. I always kind of laugh that you kind of fall into distribution. You really don't land there on purpose, but I've been in that same industry my whole life. It is a very male-dominated industry, so I think that's where kind of some of my journey has really grown. First, in your career, you try to fit into the male industry, and then you realize maybe fitting in isn't quite what it's all cracked up to be, and then you kind of try to navigate what that looks like. So really being in a man's industry is what I've done for 20 years. Really the background is I created most of the roles that I had just by filling a void in the market. So it was like, hey, why aren't we looking at profitability stuff? And they're like, I don't know. Why don't you do that? I'm like, cool, I'll be the profitability manager, right? And then you start down that path. And then before you know it, you're like, now I'm going to manage pricing for a while. And then that kind of takes off. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I think I'm going to move and run a distributor with, two of my best friends in the industry. And, that took on a new journey. So figuring out where there was like a need in the market, and I raised my hand all the time. Like, hey, I think this is something that we need to be doing. And that's how my career in distribution has been. They say once you get in distribution, you don't get out.
Well, it sounds like there's some boldness to unpack there for sure, in the sense of that long in an industry and then doing certain things. And also sounds like you're an innovative spirit and someone who also pushes for the next level. Like if it's good, let's make it great and let's figure it out. So I'm going to have some fun jumping into that with you.
Love it.
So how would you define bold? What does bold look like for Michelle?
I think bold for me is something that's equally scary, but also exciting, because I think that there's kind of that fear when you're scared of the unknown of like what's going to happen, right? I'm a planner. I want to know what's next. I want my 5-year plan. I want a natural progression to things. I tend to be a visionary thinker, and so I can kind of see the future. And when I don't see the future, that's a little scary for me. So I feel like it's that, but then it's also that excitement of the unknown, of like what something could be. And like you said, how something could go from good to great. Again, one of my favorite books is Good to Great, but just kind of taking that, the exciting piece, and what could it be, and what freedom could it give me, and what if it really does take off, or, what if it really does become great? And when the scale tips more towards exciting is when I think I've made some of my bolder moves.
Yeah, it is a bit scary. It's not always just yay and excitement, for sure. If it doesn't feel a little uneasy, it most likely isn't some form of bold. And bold can be different things for different people, and it may feel big or small, but it's still bold. So can you remember your first moment of boldness based on that definition?
I think my very first moment of boldness was when I was in my career in my 30s. And somebody said, I'm going to have you work directly for the COO. And I freaked out. I was like, no, what? Like, no. I mean, I will write an email to them, but work for them? That's craziness. And this mentor really guided me, got to know me, got to know my skill set, how I think, and said, no, I really think we need some young, fresh take on things. I think we need a new perspective. And I think that you guys would really get along well. And at that time, it wasn't like I really had a choice, but I also think that I took that step of well, shoot, I don't know what it looks like to be 31 years old and working for the COO of a huge company. But why not? If this guy thinks I can do it, and I created a role that I was very comfortable with, very strategic, very innovative, forward thinking at the time for the industry. And then once I kind of got to know him, I was like, man, this does work. He's just a guy. He's just a normal person, and then you kind of bounce ideas off of each other. So I think my very first bold move was the fact that somebody kind of recommended me for a very large jump in my career that at the time I definitely did not feel ready for. So it was like exciting, but yet it was like, holy crap, what do you wear? What do you say? Like, do I wear a polo every day? Like, what do I do when I'm in the room with an executive, right? Because at the time, like, executives were a big deal. And now I kind of realize a little bit more as I became one, like, we're just people, we're just people with different experiences and different levels of maturity at some point,
For sure. I remember for my MHA, so I have a few master's degrees and I'm finishing my doctorate. And for my MHA, I got very nervous. You do a residency. So you go to school, you do your deal, and then you spend a year within a health system. And I love that part of our program. But I was very, very nervous because I really wanted this interview. And you have different interviews. And I was a young mom and, like I didn't want to mess it up. I went and I got my hair done and I remember I put it up in a bun. like that's what you do.
Yeah.
I would never wear a bun in my life. Like, nice back, almost like wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could not afford very much. So Spiegel, I don't know if anyone remembers Spiegel ever being.
Yeah.
There was something called Spiegel magazine. I ordered a suit from that and it was like something I totally couldn't afford. And I left the tags on it just in case I didn't get the job. I was going to send it. I don't know if that's a terrible thing to do. Please, I don't advise that anyone, but I was 26 years old and I didn't want to look bad, but I had that sense of like, oh, I'm going to sit in the room with the CEO. That's who I had to, interview with. And it was just interesting because it's like, okay, in the sense of feeling like somewhere where you don't belong or maybe where you not belong, but like you're not ready for it, right? So it sounded like you had a similar experience. You weren't wearing a suit that had a tag still attached to it, but it's kind of the same feeling of uneasiness, but you did it. And obviously you did a great job at it because you've been a leader in this industry for a while. What does electrical distribution mean? Like, what does that mean? Because I'm totally in awe of it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I love that question because it really is getting a little more attention now with all the supply chain issues in the world. Well, what a distributor does is we don't make anything, right? We literally are services, value add, logistics. So we buy over 3,000 manufacturers' products, put it on our shelf, kit it, add value to the process, bundle it, and then resell it to our contractor market. Mainly, there's a lot of markets and segments, of course, don't need to go into that, but there's that mix of products that you bundle for your customers, you add value, and then you deliver it when they want it, how they want it, if they want it kitted, do they want all the garbage thrown away, they have elevator time. I mean, there's all these factors that go into new construction and us just making their lives easier, especially now with the labor shortages. Labor is the most expensive piece of a project. So getting the product to them so that they're ready for point of install is really what a distributor has been adding the most value to. During COVID, we were an essential business. So I think that helped get a little bit of attention, right? Because we were, open the entire time, still going into the office, still making sure that the job stayed going. It's interesting. I was just talking to someone the other day and I said, nobody really understands electrical distribution until I say, that gray box in your basement that when the fuse goes out, you got to go flip the switch? We're kind of that gray box for large buildings, right? It's all the things that go behind that. It makes the power run, right? All the wire, all the boxes, all the fittings. It's everything before the drywall goes in. So it's like our work is never really seen, right? It's all hidden behind the walls, but it's important. So that's what a distributor does. It's very male dominated. And 20 plus years ago when I was in college, it was a new major. It was called industrial distribution management. I think now it's called something like supply chain or logistics.
Yeah. So was that your major?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you went in to college. So you kind of stayed on your life path where like several of us, have not, and we're figuring it out. So that's cool. What made you pick that? That's pretty avant-garde.
Yeah. I'm kind of a trailblazer when it comes to like seeing something and being like, that's cool, that's innovative. And I grab onto things like that. There was this brand new major. I was the second graduating class at U of I, and it was called industrial distribution management.
Okay.
And at the time it was the college that had 100% job placement. And I was like, sign me up for that, because whatever has 100% job placement, right after 9/11, I was graduating and I was like, you know what? I think I need a job, obviously, and that's what I'm here for. So I also liked that it was a lot of real world experience. So at the time, it was a lot of real world case studies. There were case competitions where like companies would come in, hire a bunch of smart college kids to like work on real life problems and then present the solution. And I kind of realized that was what I was good at, is taking real life data and problems and working it through algorithms and different forecast models to kind of come out and say, what does this look like? Or what could something look like to problem solve? And so I kind of just got into a major because the curriculum itself interested me. It was a little more than your standard numbers and business kind of stuff. And then it was also a half an engineering degree as well. So it's all I got business, I got engineering, I get problem solving, I get real world experience.
Yeah, and you get a job at the end of it too, right? So that's the key thing. It sounds like there's key things, obviously, from your experience at college, but also that are important for not only the knowledge set, that foundation from school, but also some of the softer skills. So when you think of the success that you've had in this industry, what are some of the softer skills that you've had to hone just to be successful?
Yeah. Oh, that is such a great question. So I would think two things that came with experience and maybe some trial and error was really figuring out how to be my authentic self and really hone in onto like my innate characteristics and my strengths, and really stop trying to be like somebody that I wasn't, or trying to be one of the guys. So I think some of the softer skills that I really learned was really just trying to figure out who my authentic self was. What do I want to be? I want to be kind. I want to have integrity. I didn't want to come in and have to like sit and be all stern and, be this businesswoman. I wanted to be me. So I think when I really started figuring out the softer side of like, what skills do I have that I can hone in on my strengths, I really want to encourage people and think what the next problem is, lead people to the solution. So I think some of the softer skills was really how to collaborate with people and also utilize my strengths, because a lot of times I can be very misunderstood, right? I can come in with the answers, but I don't have the answers. I just want to brainstorm and think about possibilities and answers. And sometimes coming in with that approach cannot get the best end result. So I think some of the softer skills I learned were really just honing in on how to guide people and have really strategic conversations without kind of coming across like I have the answer already, because I usually don't. But I can be very misunderstood that as a leadership, you come in and you're very intelligent and you know what you're doing. You have all this data and facts and you're organized and you look so put together. The perception is different than what reality is. And I think some of that with some of the softer skills that I had to learn in leadership is I want to be my authentic self, but I still need to tone it back enough that people can bring their authentic self to the table as well. And then how to collaborate through that. One of the big management tools that we use is called Culture Index. And I really was able to take and learn everyone's innate characteristics and how they work together, right? And how like somebody who's more innovative thinking or has to be the expert at something, and somebody who needs all the detail, and someone who's like, what's the worst that could happen, right? How to take all those different viewpoints and ways of thinking and create a collaborative team that comes up with the best idea at the end. And I think some of those softer skills, really to kind of circle back, is just being my authentic self with my strengths, but then also accepting everyone else for their innate characteristics and strengths, and really just figuring out how to make that work and collaborate as a team. I mean, I think that women have a very kind of intuitive approach to some of that can be seen as soft at times. But I really kind of just tried to embrace that side of myself as being kind, and really just trying to make that a very authentic, collaborative environment. So I think those are some of like the softer skills. It's really on the people side, right? It's on the communication side.
Yeah, it's a lot of relational pieces, right? So I think that's key.
Yeah.
One thing I want to go back to, because I bet a lot of people can relate to, is being misunderstood. So, example of me, maybe similar to you, is I think out loud. When I think out loud, literally, I'm like shooting out 15 questions in a row, and I don't know the answer to any of them, and I'm not expecting anyone to know the answer. But that's not good when you're a leader or you're a C-suite individual, because then your staff feels either put on the spot, or they feel like they're supposed to know the answers that even you don't know. But I think you figure out how to hone that over time. But it can be misunderstood, right? It is aggressive or bossy, or like, why is she asking me all those questions? And anyway, I think if you think about being misunderstood and how over time you have had to maybe edit or audit yourself? Like, this is how I felt in the corporate world. I use my example of the hat. Like, no one knew I wore a hat, and I wear a hat a lot now. So I think this is a silly thing. It's not a bad hat or anything like that, but it was just something I was like, oh, that was professional enough, or that I don't even know if I can post that on social media. I didn't do a lot of that because of editing and auditing myself, especially in the world we're in today. And so when you think about being misunderstood and being your authentic self, what are some key pieces that people can learn from your journey there?
I think self-awareness is something that's a really big piece of that journey, is just really understanding yourself and even how some of your strengths come across to others, some of those perceptions. Sometimes you have to learn that the hard way by rubbing a few people the wrong way or coming across. So I think some of it's trial and error. I do think, though, too, that being your authentic self and being misunderstood, I'm learning this. I don't actually think I've mastered it yet. So I think some of my advice is just to continually check in on yourself. When you're the only one in the room that's talking, acknowledge that and kind of take a step back. Right. I think just acknowledging some of your strengths that get overpowering, I think, is a big piece of knowing it. I'm really right now, I'm very new into it, but my company had us do the Liz Wiseman multipliers and really learning that like some of these really core strengths that we have are actually accidental diminishers, right? Like we're the idea fountain, or we're always on and we're always this, but it makes other people shut down. And so really trying to look through some of those multiplier strategies on how to take a strength and tone it back a little so that it doesn't become an accidental diminisher. That is something I'm working on and I'm learning about it, but it's been pretty powerful. If, I want to be on all the time, or I want to have these ideas, but if that doesn't create a safe space for others, then really I'm not accomplishing my goal and the team is going to suffer for it, right? So I also think too that you need to surround yourself with people who accept you for who you are and who are willing to let you have those accidental diminishers and not criticize you for every little word you say or little thing you do. And I want to be around people that let me be myself and accept, okay, Michelle, tone it back a little, okay? Like too many ideas, let someone else talk, but in a safe place that you don't feel judged and criticized or just shut off. So I think it's a mix of working with people that let you be your authentic self, but also having that balance of somebody who can kind of tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, tone it back a notch. Your accidental diminishers are kicking in. But I think just kind of that mix of a safe place to be yourself, but then also checking in on that self-awareness and just kind of keeping those balance is something I'm really working on. And I hope it'll make me a better communicator and a better teammate. I don't know. I think it's a balance. I think it's a personality. And I think it really boils down to a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah, I like the term accidental diminisher because it's like no one's doing it on purpose. When I'm shooting out 1,000 questions, or when I'm like just being creative or thinking about something, but I don't have anything on paper. It's just all in between my ears. Like that's stressful. People would help me actually create it or get to the next level or, get an outline of it. So I think those are things I've definitely honed over time. And again, I just like the term that it's not on purpose, it's accidental. So when you think about alignment, like all your different roles, obviously we've talked a lot about the professional. You're a mom of 3 boys, and my goodness, I don't know how much coffee that takes, and add in 2 dogs. What's in your tank? Like, what's keeping you going? What drives you?
That's a really great question. And it is a lot of coffee and then a lot of wine. And there is a balance of those two. I think I've really aligned where my time is spent with things that I'm passionate about. And that when I give all that energy, I get fulfilled back for it, right? So my children are my number one priority. And any amount of time that I put into them, I get back. Even if I'm exhausted, I still feel fulfilled at the end of the day by giving back to them. Sometimes like that's where the dog comes in. It's, I can be having a really crappy day and my dog just comes and lays on my lap. And I'm like, okay, just needed that for that moment, And so they give me something that fulfills me and then I give back to them. And I think it's just that kind of cycle of fulfillment. I also think too, it's having no regret, I think is a piece of it because I'll never regret spending too much time with my kids. So I think some of the things that I pour my time into are things that I know I won't regret it. I'm not going to be like, damn, I wish I didn't go to so many baseball games or, man, I wish I worked more, and missed all my kids' performances. I'm never going to say that, right? And so when I kind of have these moments of like my kids are driving me nuts and I just, have those moments where I'm not my best version of myself, I just kind of take a step back and I'm grateful that they really fulfill me back. It's kind of like the flywheel that keeps me going, right? It's like I have more coffee and then they fulfill me and then I'm happy again. And then sometimes I could sleep in there. And I think at the end of the day, it's just keeping all of that circle of life in motion and really just removing the toxic pieces of my life and then really just focusing on the positives, because I really do believe that positivity is a choice. And that is something that I've kind of gravitated on even like LinkedIn, right? It's like, I just want to read something that makes me feel good, because there's a lot of moments I'm not feeling good, or that I'm upset, or I'm not the best version of myself. And those are the times when I lean towards the things that fulfill me. And whether it's my kids, or positivity is a choice, or just things that fulfill me is kind of where I go when my tank is empty.
Yeah, sometimes days are rough. Like no matter what you're doing,
Yeah.
whether you're in corporate or an entrepreneur, or you're taking a break, or you're at home with your kids, or whatever it may be. Those are all hard jobs, and there's a lot that comes at us. And for me, I try to fill my tank with things that are positive, things that are good, because there's a lot that's not out there. And like seeking it out to look at it, like I don't do that. Like it just really impacts me in such a negative way. Like think about it, or anyway, I really try to put in the tank the stuff that's going to fuel me in the right way. I think with all the things that we have at our disposal now, I, like you, just try to get out there and like be a light of good. Here's a cute dog picture, although it's probably not appropriate for LinkedIn, but hey, here it is. And here's my office mates today. And I think, it's just those little things that I think add up. One, for you, like getting to know someone as much as you can get to know someone via social media, because it's still not the same as talking to someone. And so I think it's important to fill your tank with the right fuel. Like if you think about putting diesel in your car by accident, if you've ever done it, I don't. So I've almost done it once. I was like, oh man, this doesn't fit. I just remember my husband going, oh my gosh, no, that doesn't. Anyway, I was tired. I don't know why I did it. I mean, I'm not that silly that I wouldn't know. But yeah, if you put diesel in your tank when it's not supposed to be there, like you're going to chug.
Yep.
And like you just have to think about what you're putting in there. The same thing goes for wellness and nutrition and self care and those types of things that we usually don't put in our tank or on our tab to take care of ourselves. So I think that's just a note or a plug for people to think about how they're doing that, because without those things going in, it's really hard to give out. And,
Yeah.
those moments with your children and with your family or with your pets, like you want to make sure you have enough to enjoy those moments. And sometimes we run out of energy. I mean, it's just human.
Yeah, and I really do what you're saying. Like, I'm not good at self-care. I haven't been, right? And I think I'm trying to intentionally make that a priority of like eating healthier or working out or, drinking clean wine I've switched to, which has been really positive, because it's like, I can't give up wine, but
Yeah.
maybe I can switch to like a healthier version of it or something
Yeah.
that doesn't have side effects for me. And so really just trying to plug and play what works, and little bit by bit, just, I'm going on your bold retreat because I'm like, I need to do this for me. I need like a break. I want to do this by myself for me, to have alone time to think about things, but in an environment where I feel supported, and where if I need a moment to cry, someone's going to like hug me and they're like, okay, snap out of it. We got work to do. What's your plan? And it's like, I want that balance. I want to be allowed to cry in 1 minute and pick myself back up and say, I got this. In the same moment, wipe away the tears and say, I got this. And I think those are kind of the pieces of like self-care that I'm working on and I'm not very good at yet.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of us that are work in progress. I think, and everyone's formula is different too. I think that's the other thing. And that's something I've been struggling with, is like, what is the dang formula for me? Because I think I got it so messed up being in the corporate world where it's hard for me to get back to center. And I just have to be intentional about doing it. And you've seen me even post about it's like, don't give up, keep the discipline. Don't crush yourself because you didn't do something or didn't meet a goal. Like get back at it. And like if I love these things. I say be 1% better than yesterday. I was like, all right, I could do that. It doesn't have to be such a macro step. Sometimes it doesn't have to match. Michelle and Lee don't have the same plan, and that's okay. We may help each other, but it doesn't mean you have to do what I do, and vice versa. So I think that's important for folks to hear too, because it's not a one size fits all. And you may need more of something, or I may need more of something than you do. I just think it's important to just make time for it. And that's the challenge there, is just that, where do I carve it out of my busy, busy life to take care of myself? And what happens is you will, get somewhere where you don't want to be, very unhappy or burnt out. That was my case. I was just work, 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 and nothing else. And, I was a nub. So I don't recommend it.
Yeah, so what works for one person doesn't work for the other, right? I have something that I get energy from being with and around people and relating to people and talking to them and networking. I am like so excited. I have so much energy. I'm excited to be with people and hug people and talk and get to know people and relate to people. But on the flip side, I have some of my employees that are like, you couldn't kick me dragging and screaming to a networking event. That drains me, stresses me out. I want to get on a plane. I don't want to touch people. I don't, and it's like, well, wait a minute. All the things that fill me up and are exciting for me drain and completely are against what somebody else would be fulfilled by. And just appreciating that it's not for everybody.
Yeah. Or sometimes we have to work through it. Like I have introvert moments that I didn't realize I had because I can speak publicly. I can talk to a stranger. I don't have any issue walking into a room in the sense of like professionally and getting, to know someone. But like on the social side, I'm a little awkward. Like I went to the chief event and I don't know if I told you this, but I almost left. I mean, I went in, there's 200 really powerful women all like on the dance floor, and you can't even get on the dance floor. And I was really, really nervous. And I texted my daughter and my husband. I was like, do I have to stay? And they're like, yes, you're so excited about it. And I finally just like into it. And then, had a couple people come up who had known me from LinkedIn. And then I felt a whole lot better. But it's interesting because sometimes you do avoid things that drag you down or feel like they're going to take a lot from you. And there's some time where you like lean in and step into it. And that was kind of my funny moment that I had. And then I shut it down. Like I waited till it ended.
Love it.
So, what advice would you give someone as we're kind of closing here on being aligned to themselves, being authentic, and then making sure that they're making time for the things that bring them joy? Any tips for the listeners?
I think that self-awareness is a big piece. I also think that like just taking time, like right now I'm off the grid, right? I'm on my off the grid vacation. I'm working on the business, on my life plan, on something and not in it. So sometimes I think taking that back and removing yourself from the daily hustle and bustle and giving yourself that space to think about things in a little bigger picture. I tend to be a visionary thinker. So to me, that works. That may not work for everybody, but I think sometimes just taking that moment to pause, self-reflect, be like, I'm really upset and I don't know why, and to really kind of reflect on that. Sometimes just that off the grid, taking a break from the daily grind is really what I say is kind of my piece of advice. And whatever that is, whether that's taking some PTO time, just having some self-alone reflection time, I think would be probably my biggest piece of advice. It would be definitely the advice I would have given myself a long time ago is just take a breath and just give yourself a little bit of space to think through some of this. You have a plan, but kind of just making sure that you have both sides of the coin. I think a little bit, I don't know if I believe in work-life balance because I feel like if you're fulfilled, enjoying life and, keeping things going, then maybe you don't have to have a balance. But I also think there needs to be kind of that give and take to make sure that your tank doesn't get too empty and that you're also not too burnt out. I think some of that to me is that pause and reflect piece.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen the Simon Sinek video about balance, and it's basically like going back and forth almost. You're going from one side to another, like in a skateboard pit. And it's actually, I think I use the word alignment. Like, am I in alignment? What brings me joy? Am I in alignment with what I want to do professionally and personally and all the other things that you want to add in there? And then when you say no to any of those, like, okay, let's unpack that a little bit. My advice to myself is give myself some slack and stop being so hard on yourself. But I think I use journals like to make lists and to do the little checkbox thing. And I'm a weird note taker. Like if you ever saw my notes, they like go in a circle and they're like, they're backwards and upside down. It's really weird, honestly. And it drives my staff nuts. But I know where to find stuff mostly. So without going back, use the tool, like make it yours. Whatever it is, like make it yours. If you don't like to meditate, maybe just be in quiet for a little bit and think about, maybe just your alone time is taking a creative trip to an antique store or going to the bookstore and getting a really cool coffee or whatever. It doesn't have to be something so deep and that you come out with your life plan. Like it's just take a breath.
Yeah. Well, and what you do, it's like, I think one of the click moments for me was when I defined my purpose, right? And when you define your purpose and why you do things and what drives you, it kind of makes some of the criticism go a little bit lower on your thought pattern. Because it's, when you're being criticized about something and you're like, it's getting to you, you're like, why am I letting this get to me? Right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, my purpose, I define, and I went through Simon Sinek's start with why, find your why. Right. And it was like, do this so that this, right. And that framework for me really worked. And I'll share like my purpose is to create an environment for people where they can be the best version of themselves so they can make a difference and add value. And for me, it was like, well, that's why I do this and that's why I do that. And, if I want to create an environment for people to do this in, it just helps me ground some of why I do things and, why I like to party plan and give goodie bags and why I do all these silly little gift things that they're just little tokens that make a memory. And to me, some of that is what helped me when I redefined my purpose is it just made some of that criticism go down a little bit and become less important in my life. And I think that was a key moment for me as you were talking of kind of that reflection of what my purpose is. And then everything else just kind of like the background is blurred. And it just like I felt like my vision was clear and everything else blurred into the background. And for me, that was kind of those reflection moments that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, very, very cool. Well, thank you, Michelle, for being on the Bold Lounge. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I know that your story has inspired others. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Bold Lounge podcast. Through the continuum of bold stories, vulnerability to taking a leap, you will meet more extraordinary people making a positive impact for others through their unique and important story. By highlighting these stories, we hope to inspire others and share the journey of those with a bold mindset. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and look forward to sharing the next bold journey with you.